This time we're going to be covering Unit 3E, how numbers can deceive. So you will see numbers and data, everywhere from, progress reports, grades, media, government reports, and you can always manipulate the data to kind of say whatever you want. It goes back to one of the classic Mark Twain quotes that goes, there are three types of lies. There are damned lies, and there are statistics. And unfortunately, it's a little bit true that you can kind of, if you manipulate the data, manipulate the situation enough, you can really make it say whatever you want. So the purpose behind this unit is to kind of look at how data is supposed to be used and identify really when you're being lied to. So we're going to take a case of a pharmaceutical company. They have a new treatment for acne. So to decide whether the new treatment is better than the old treatment, they give the old treatment to 90 patients, the new treatment to 110 patients, and the data is summarized below. Now, several mistakes with this. Kind of the first one that's not a big one, but it's a little bit concerning, is the fact that they gave the old treatment to 90 patients and the new treatment to 110. So ideally, you'd be a little bit closer to 50-50, so 100 and 100. I'd say not a huge deal, but it is just a little bit concerning. The first big problem is if you look at how the treatments were dispersed. So the old treatment was given to 10 people with mild acne. However, it was given to 80 people with severe acne. The new treatment was given to 90 people with mild acne, only 20 people with severe acne. So the first thing they're trying to do is skew the data. Okay, these numbers need to be closer to 50-50. I can't have 10 and 80 and 90 and 20. Okay. And if you look at this, what they're doing is they gave 90 cases or 90 treatments to mild acne while giving 80 treatments to severe acne. So that is a big concern. Those numbers need to be closer to 50-50. So if you want to have 90 people on the old treatment, it better be close to 45-45, severe and mild. And if you're going to have 110 patients taking the new treatment, it better be closer to 55-55. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect, but they do need to be closer. So if you look at the data in the table, with mild acne, 2 out of 10 people were cured on the old treatment. That's a 20% cure rate. And then 30 out of 90 people were cured on the new treatment. That's 33. So they're going to say a 33% cure rate is higher than a 20% cure rate. So the new treatment is better. For those among the old or the severe acne, 40% were cured out of the 80. That's a 50% cure rate. And 12 were cured out of 20. That's 60% cure rate. And they're going to say 60 is higher than 50. So the new treatment is better than the old treatment. Okay, 33 is higher than 20, 60 is higher than 50. Obviously, the new treatment is better. However, if you look at the overall results, okay, there are 90 patients who received the old treatment. 42 were cured. 2 out of 10 for mild and 40 out of 80 for severe. That is 46.7% cured. Out of the 110 people that received the new treatment, 42 were also cured. 30 out of 90 for mild, 12 out of 20 for severe. Well, they had same thing. They had 42 people cured, but they had 110 people to start with. So that's only 38.2%. So the overall old treatment has a higher cure rate than the new treatment, even though individually it broke up. Okay. So even though they tried to kind of manipulate the data, there's always a way to find it. Okay, this one's a little bit easier to see, but it's the same concept. So in the first half, Kevin shot 4 out of 10 in the basketball game for 40%. Kobe shot 1 out of 4 for 25%. So Kevin had a higher percentage than Kobe. In the second half, Kevin was 3 out of 4 for 75%, while Kobe was 4 out of 10 for 70%. So Kevin shot higher in both the first half and the second half. Does that automatically mean that he shot better for the game? Well, if we look at the entire game, Kevin made 7 baskets. 4 in the first half, 3 in the second half, out of 14 shots. So 7 out of 14 is 50%. It's a pretty good shooting night. However, Kobe hit 8 shots, 1 in the first half, 7 in the second half, out of 14, 4 out of 10, for 57%. So even though Kevin had better shooting percentages in both halves, Kobe shot better overall for the game. This goes back to what we talked about earlier in never average percentages. It does not work. So this is called, kind of the idea behind this is known as Simpson's paradox. Okay, you don't need to know the name, but that's just kind of the concept. So one of the things you can look at, this was done in 1973. They were looking at admissions to Berkeley. And Berkeley that year had about 2,700 men apply. They accepted 1,200 for 44.5% admittance rate. There was just over 1,800 women that applied. They accepted about 550 for 30.4% admission rate. So the argument was, well, women are being discriminated against. There's less of them, and they're coming in at a lower percentage, 30% versus 44.5%. However, when you broke it down by departments, Department A accepted a higher percentage of women, 82 to 62. Department B accepted a higher percentage of women, 68 to 63. Department C did have a slightly higher percentage of men, 37 to 34. Department D had a slightly higher percentage of women, 35 to 33. Department E, also a slightly higher percentage of men, 28 to 24. And Department F, slightly higher women, 6 to 7. So within the departments, there was no real discrimination against women. Okay. For departments A, it was higher, B was higher, A was a lot higher, B a little bit higher, D slightly higher, and F slightly higher, about the same, but slightly higher. And then for C and E that accepted a higher percentage of men, it was only slightly higher as well. Okay, so even though there was no significant department prejudice, okay, the overall prejudice or the overall difference was a lot, even though you couldn't find a single department that was really, it was a 14% difference in percentages overall. There's no department that had more than a 4% for E, 4% difference between them. Okay, so that's what Simpson's paradox means. You can't take percentages and just do an overall thing. You've got to break them down and look at them individually. You see this a lot with positives as well, or false positive in treatments. So I'm going to guess most of you have probably gotten tested for COVID at some point in your life in the last, ever since it started. And you'll have positive and negative cases. Okay, positive means you have the disease, negative means you do not. So it really breaks down into 4 categories. There's a true positive, which means you tested positive and have the disease. There's a false positive, which means you tested positive but you don't have the disease. A false negative means you tested negative, but you actually carry the disease. And a true negative means you tested negative and you don't have the disease. Okay. So this one deals with cancer, but it can apply to COVID, apply to strep, pregnancy, drug testing, anything like that with the testing. You're going to have these 4 categories. So in this case, the test is 85% accurate. Okay. So there was, we'll kind of keep numbers round and easy. So there was 100 women who had breast cancer, or the tumor was malignant. And with an 85% success rate, means 85 out of 100 were true positives. They had the disease and the test caught it. 15 were false negative, meaning they had the disease, but the test did not catch it. So the other 9,900 women had benign tumors. Okay, it means they had a tumor, but it's not cancerous. Well, it's 85% accurate for that too, which meant 8,415 were true negatives, meaning they did not have cancer and the test said they didn't. But 1,485 were false positive. Their cancer was, or the tumor was benign, but it showed up as cancerous. So the question becomes, if you got a positive test result, do you actually have cancer? Well, if we look at the data, there were 8,430 women who had, let's go back. Let's do that. Okay, so if the test is 85% accurate, that means there was 1,570 positive tests. Well, only 85% of 85 women had cancer. That's only 5.4% of positive tests actually had cancer. Okay, the rest of those would be false positives. Now, if it's something like strep throat, you've gone to the doctor, you've taken a kid to the doctor, and they'll do a quick test. Well, if your throat's sore and you've got kind of the whiteness on the tongue or, the drainage or whatever, if it's a false positive, meaning the test said you've got strep, but you don't actually have it, if they give you amoxicillin, which is usually what they give for strep throat, it's really not that big a deal. Okay, it's not going to hurt you. You'll take the amoxicillin. It'll kill off, some of the cells, because that's what antibiotics do, but it's not going to cause any long-term damage for you. If you're dealing with cancer, though, and you accidentally or incorrectly send somebody in to chemo, now you've got a problem, because chemo is absolutely brutal. And so you have potentially 95% of women that are positive, the test says they've got cancer, that don't need to go into chemo. And that's a lot of, if you will, destruction based on a false positive. Now, they will go around it and they will do multiple tests to figure out, make sure that you don't have chemo, or you don't need chemo. So they won't rely just on one test. That's why, if you've been someone that has it, they're like, we want you to come in for more tests. Well, that's to cover, the 95% that don't need it. So they're going to look at it. They'll do a second test. That was positive. Maybe they'll do a third test. That's positive. And what they're doing is they're trying to weed out all the false positives by running different tests. Okay, so don't just think just because it's the first one's positive doesn't mean you automatically have it. Okay, so example 2. Based on the numbers, what percentage of women with a negative test result actually have cancer? These are your false positive. So 15 women had false negatives. There was 8,430 negative tests. Okay, that means that 0.18% of women who had a negative test actually have cancer. And that would be a problem because the cancer is going to spread even though it's on a negative test. All right, number 3, based on the table, what percentage of women with positive tests do not actually have cancer? So there was 1,485 false positives out of 1,570 positive tests, giving us 94.6% chance of a false positive. So that means you tested positive for cancer and you don't actually have a cancerous tumor. So you can do that with anything COVID test, drug testing. If you're doing drug testing, for those that were in high school, you had the kid that came out and were like, I am so busted, I failed that test. And then, they're still playing sports 3 months later. Okay, that would be a false negative. They actually took something that they shouldn't have, but the test said they were positive. In the case of drug testing, a true positive means you took the drugs and you got caught. A true negative means you were clean and the test said you were clean. Those are the ones you want. You want to catch the kids taking. You want to clear the kids that are not. The ones that run into problems would be the false positive. That means the test said that you tested positive, but you actually didn't take anything. So if you follow the news, you'll see, they had tests are starting to come back from the Olympics, and you'll hear them say, well, their sample A was positive, and now they're testing sample B. Okay, that's a similar thing. They're trying to do multiple tests to make sure that they're actually catching the cheaters, and they're not falsely accusing somebody of taking drugs when they actually didn't. Doesn't mean they didn't knowingly take something. That's a very different story here. So, I didn't know. Well, it's your job to know. Literally, if you're going to be a professional athlete, it's your job to know that you can't take certain things. All right, so if we're looking at absolute and relative difference, kind of going back to what this was a little bit previous, we're going to do another example. So we have a proposed federal tax cut that a single person making $49,000 would save $261. A single person making $560,000 would save $12,041. If you're married with 2 kids and you made $49,000, you would save $1,657. And married 2 kids at $560,000, you would save $13,854. All right, so first question. What is the absolute difference in a single person at $49,000 and a single person at $560,000? Well, to find the absolute difference, you just subtract. So 261 minus 12,041 means there's a difference of $11,780. And then express the savings as a percent. So 261 divided by 49,000 is 0.53. So that person is saving 0.53% of their total income. The person making 560,000 is saving 2.2% of their income for taxes. Find the absolute difference between married couples. So 1657 minus 13,854 means the difference is 12,197. Whereas a married couple with kids making 49,000 would save 3.4%, and the married couple at 560,000 would save 2.47%. So the question then becomes, do the tax cuts help lower income people? Well, they do help. I mean, you're saving $261 and $1,657. So the next question is, do they help them more? And the reason I left this blank is not because I didn't feel like writing out a great big long answer, but rather we don't know. If the person who is single at $59,000 a year is paying $261 in federal tax, well, that deduction is going to wipe out their entire tax and they're going to pay 0. you can't go any less than 0% income tax. Same thing with the married couple. Maybe they paid $1,657 in income tax, and with this new budget, they're not going to pay any income tax. Maybe they will pay an income tax. So we don't know. We can talk about the decrease, but unless we have a reference point of how much they're paying to begin with, we don't know if it's a great discount. I mean, if they're paying $5,000 in tax, $261 isn't that big a drop. But once again, if they're paying $300 in tax, $261 is almost all of their tax bill. So you really need more information before you can make a final decision. All right, polygraphs. We have a polygraph. This one's 90% accurate. So we are testing 1,000 applicants. 10 of them lie. 990 tell the truth. Well, because it's 90% accurate, we catch 9 of the liars. 1 of them slips through. Out of the 990 people telling the truth, our polygraph tells us that 891 are truthful and 99 are lying, even though they actually did tell us the truth. So the question becomes, what percentage of liars, accused liars, were actually telling the truth? So there was 108 people accused of lying. 99 of them were falsely accused. They were telling the truth, but the test said they lied. That means that is 91.7% of accused liars were telling the truth, and only 8.3% of accused liars were actually lying. Okay. Same thing for drug testing. Okay, once again, you can get false positives and get a different story. Those are the ones, once again, that are being accused of doping but actually aren't. Sometimes, though, it's something else. So I ran track in college. We always heard the story about the guy who switched out the test for somebody else. It was always kind of that little urban legend that happened somewhere, but nobody knew exactly who. Well, it actually did happen. So DJ Cooper was given a 2-year ban in global basketball after his test showed that he was pregnant. So it turns out that this was not a false positive. Okay, he switched out this test sample with his girlfriend. Okay, and got a 2-year suspension because of that, for tampering with a sample. Okay, this is not a case of false positive, false negative, anything like that. Okay, this is a case where the data was skewed, was lied, just flat out lied. Okay, so this is something completely different. So the false positive, false negative means the test and the sample were administered correctly, the results were just bad. This is a case where the data was purposely manipulated for the hopes of getting a completely different outcome. Obviously, he was on something, or you wouldn't try to mess with the data, but such is life. Although that would be a very interesting conversation to come home to. How was your day? Well, 2 things. 1, I'm suspended from basketball, and 2, apparently you are pregnant. All right, enjoy.